When you don't go to Geico.com, car insurance can be confusing. Like Swedish techno confusing.
Bark, bark, meow, meow. Dance with me, purple cow. Bark, bark, meow, meow. Ooh, you lovely cow.
Geico makes it easy. With 24/7 access, all you have to do is go to Geico.com and you could save money on car insurance. It just makes sense. Unlike,
Dance with me, purple cow. I like your moves.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.
Welcome to another edition of Free Association Radio. This is the Robert Phoenix Show, and this is the Friday farcast. Back in the day when I listened to music very intensely, there was this thing called a record player. It was an amazing kind of device. And there were these things called records. And they were made out of acetate originally, and then they would be pressed into plastic. And on those records, they would have grooves, little tiny grooves. And on those grooves, there was sound. And it was magical, absolutely magical, to think that you could take this arm and put it on this piece of spinning material, and as soon as you dropped the needle on the record, there was a new world that would open up. There was something tremendous about that experience. Something that we don't have the opportunity. I mean, yes, there are record players now. There are records, there's a bit of a vinyl explosion, but it is not the predominant way we sample, ingest, and digest media, particularly sound media. And there are some good things about how we do that today. I'm not a complete revisionist. I like using my cell phone and plugging into KCRW Eclectic 24, which, by the way, I highly recommend. You can get that through the TuneIn app, and you get 24 hours of nonstop music from one of the best radio stations in the world. And a lot of it's going to be contemporary stuff. So you're going to discover new artists and artists that are worth discovering. I love being able to just plug that into my phone, jack it into my stereo, my car, and listen to streaming music unencumbered. It's great. But there was something about the record player. It's something about touching something. It was tactile, and you had to handle the record in just the right way. You get it out and you slide it out of the album jacket. And the album jacket and the cover was, well, that was a whole other ritual in and of itself. Album art. It was remarkable. It was remarkable, the detail, the mythos. There were great album cover artists. The company Hypnosis, which created a lot of the album art for bands like Yes and Supertramp. Incredible art. Guy Peelart had a run there for a while as an album cover artist. Peter Max. The list goes on and on and on. You get into the 4AD catalog, and the album art for the 4AD catalog was amazing. ECM, the stark photographic representation of their catalog. Album art represented a brand. When you saw an ECM album cover, you kind of knew what you were getting. When you saw a 4AD album cover, you knew what you were getting. There was something about the music and the brand, even if it was kind of far afield, you were willing to take a chance and listen to it. So there was that tactile experience of pulling the record out of the sleeve, blowing on it, putting it down gently on the turntable, and then lifting up that arm, and then dropping the needle on the record, and the magic would happen. Absolute magic. You would sit there and say, how does that happen? How does this thing come alive in such a unique way? We're going from this solid experience to all of a sudden magic between your ears and your heart. Incredible. And it took time. In order to get that record, you had to go to a record store. How about that? You would get in your car, or in my case, when I was about 14 years old, we had what was called double session in high school, because my high school was so big. And my freshman year, we didn't go to school until 12:15, and we would stay until 5:45. That was our school. About, close to 6 hours, but deep into the night or the evening. So we'd have all this time during the morning, which was not good, by the way, for a 14-year-old. Let me just tell you that right now. I got into a lot of trouble during that phase of my life. Was not pretty. Was not a pretty time. The corruption of the American youth. Anyway, I would get on the bus, and I would go downtown and wait for the record store to open. I'd be the first person in the store, and I'd rifle through the bins, and I'd get what I wanted. You have to do that, though. That was part of the ritual. And then you'd bring it home. You see, all this took time. It took effort. It took some degree of planning. To be honest with you, it did. Yeah, am I saying it was better? Not necessarily. But what I'm sharing with you is that it slowed us down. It slowed us down to the point where we could have an analog relationship with life, because it was clearly an analog experience. So why am I talking about record players today? Well, because today, when I'm on my Friday show, it's like the LP. Today's show happens at 33 1/3. And there's, 2 sides to the show, which probably there will be today. There's you've got 1 hour and some music, then another hour. And then the rest of the week, what do we have? We've got singles, which I've been doing, called 15 Minutes of Flame. 15 minutes, very short. And by the way, the response to 15 minutes has been incredible. I'm looking at my stats on Blog Talk, and they're going through the roof, because that's where we are today. We are in a 15-minute attention cycle, and I don't have a problem with it. I'm not saying that we've got to do something differently. It's where we're at. On Friday, I get to stretch out a little bit more and develop some ideas and present you with kind of a more complex bin of content. Let's put it that way. Sunday night, we're doing the live stream, and I think maybe this Sunday I might try to do something a little bit different and actually incorporate Blog Talk. So we'll have Blog Talk and the live stream happening simultaneously. It could be a good experience. Could be good. So that's happening on Sunday nights, the live stream with 11th House Radio. So today's show, we're going to get into some stuff. Some real stuff. I'm just trying to figure out where I want to go first. Because what I want to talk about is I want to talk about the end of conspiracy theory. And I also want to get into this video with Trump. And I'll tell you why I want to get into the Trump video. And I have some interesting news that Jay Weidner tabled about the Trump video. I think I may table that for the second hour, because what I want to talk about is I want to talk about presidents, their sex lives, past and present, and the hypocrisy, the utter hypocrisy that exists. And there's a tie-in with the end of conspiracy. How far will this thing go? How far can we unearth the truth, and what are people willing to handle? This is what it comes down to. And from my experience, most people are unwilling to handle the truth. Now, it's changing slightly. If you've been following the WikiLeaks leaks, one of the amazing emails that has been uncovered, it comes from the Hillary Clinton camp, where they're basically saying, hey, look, the best way to deal with these people is to keep them uninformed, and we'll just manage them and move them along. However, that's not happening as well as it could be. They're not being as compliant. Yes, that's true. The masses are stirring. And the stirring is happening at an exponential rate. Absolutely exponential. Now, as a result of this, there's greater division and there's a greater split in the majority. We're becoming more divided. I'm not sure if we can heal the rift. I'm not sure if that can take place. I would love to be a universalist. I'm a universalist at heart. I would love for everybody to live in, it's a small world after all. And we could all just get along and hold hands and whistle and skip to my Lou and sing Harry Belafonte together. Kumbaya, baby. I don't know if it can happen. I just don't know if it can happen, because the depth and the degree that people are rooted in their trance, not everybody, is astonishing. I was listening to a recording with Jim Mars the other day, and Mars was talking about chemtrails and HAARP, and he was talking about how he knew a guy on the inside. This guy was part of the development of the technology, and what he shared with Mars is that that HAARP and the chemtrails, because the two are synonymous, or you've got to have the chemtrails in the sky with all the metallic particulates in order for HAARP to be effective. And there's more than one HAARP now. It's not just in Gakona, Alaska, or Tromstad, which is where the other one was in Europe. There are many HAARPs all over the place, and of course we've got the Gwen networks, and we have this very sophisticated kind of electrical grid that is supercharging the metallic particles in the sky and affecting our behavior, and so on and so on and so on. Smart meters, add it all up. We're in Elena Freeland land, which is kind of amazing, bizarre, dark, and very real kind of realm that is actualizing in our lives. Okay, that said, this insider told Jim Mars that HAARP only works on about a third of the population. And that for like one third, it absolutely does nothing. For the second third, it may make them feel a bit uncomfortable, maybe some symptoms, some physical symptoms. But on the other third, it can make them nuts and trigger them in a way that looks like it's kind of a psychopathological interface. So I'm thinking about sort of the collective mindset. And why is it that a large number of people just cannot wake the fuck up? I'm sorry, I swore. It's okay. It's okay. We're adults here. We're gonna talk about adult content in the second part of the show. And I'm warning you, it's very adult because we're getting into the sex lives of presidents and presidential candidates. I hope this show goes viral. I hope it's salacious. I could use the hits, by the way. But it's amazing, and I talk about this with my friends. Why is it that a segment of society just continues to turn a blind eye to the facts? And it not just the facts, it's beyond the facts. It's information that has been withheld from our prying eyes for decades. And now people have this thing called the internet, and they are cruising around and cracking things open and seeing what's behind the curtain. This is the end of the conspiracy theory age. When Alex Jones is having a to and fro with Rachel Maddow, when Barack Obama references Alex Jones, it is the end of the conspiracy theory era, because what's happening now is it's becoming mainstream. Mainstream. We have a titanic war taking place between mainstream news and alternative news. And mainstream news is losing. They are losing the battle. They are losing the fight. Their ratings are down, down, down. People are moving away from their gods of validation and the cable news networks because they know they are lying sacks of shit. And all they're doing, whether it's Fox or CNN or MSNBC, they are promoting an agenda. They are essentially backing up a program that the quote-unquote bankers, the internationalists, the globalists, the New World Order magicians want them to continue to drive. And they are getting really close to running this thing off of a cliff. I mean, this is where the stakes are. This is how high the stakes are right now. We are in a crucial time. Absolutely crucial. And I've talked about this before. And look, Trump is not perfect. He has warts. He's human. But the more that I, again, stay with the material around Trump, the more that I realize this guy has a stake in the game. He has a stake in the game on the American side of things. And he wants to prevent the new fucking world order, okay? Now, it may look like something different. It could be another inception, level of inception. He could usher in the new version of the new world order. We've talked about this before. It's a level of inception where you wake up from the dream, but you awaken into a deeper level of the dream. I'll talk about that later. It's a psychological tactic. It could happen. It could absolutely happen. But we know what will happen with Hillary. We know. The writing, the graffiti, the tablature is on the wall. It is staring you and us right in the face. We will have war. We are so close to war right now, it's not even funny. I've heard that the Americans are painting their jets to resemble Russian fighters. Why is that? It's because they're planning a false flag. They're planning flyovers of jets that look like Russian jets. Just like what they did with the Malaysian Airlines flight, which was shot down over Ukraine. That was the missing airliner. And it was filled with the corpses of the people that were on that plane. And they remote controlled that plane. And they'll remote control these fighters. They don't have to lose one single American. They can drone these fighters just like they drone the drones. Nobody has to be in them. The technology is there. So we'll have a false flag. We'll have a no-fly zone. Planes will be shot down. And boom, there we go. The United States will declare war. We'll have war. Get ready. Because then they can crash the economy. There's a war. There's all kinds of distraction that can take place, and it will not be pretty. It will not be pretty. And I'm telling you right now, and I hate to say this because I've got a really good friend, student client, who has a son that has enrolled in the military. He's signed up for his service, National Guard, which is not too bad, but it's still part of this machine. If we have a war, there's going to be a draft, and we're going to send our sons and daughters. And it won't be the military sons and daughters. We'll send them to the theater. Wherever the theater is, it'll likely be in the Middle East, Syria. We might have fighting. Who knows? Could be Ukraine. There are enough hot spots right now. So if you have a child that is draft eligible, 18, 19, 20, 21, you may really want to think about who you're going to elect as president. Let's use some foresight. Let's use some vision here. Something that we are often accused of not having, and there's one can make a case for that because we are so attention span clipped. We can't even think 6 to 12 to 18 months ahead of us. But if we can step back and look at the potential of a war, which is really right there on the precipice. We are like pre-World War II right now. And you've got a kid who's war age, good luck. Good luck. It's going to be interesting because the kids that are war age are going to be between 18 and 25, and these are not the millennials. Although the millennials may have to do something if they are conscripted. And the conscription is you either go or you're going to go to jail. And they'll say, well, that's not me. I'm going to go to Canada. Good luck with that. If we have open borders, Canada will kick your ass right back. Or maybe they'll conscript you to go fight for Canada. You see, this is where it's all headed. But unfortunately, it's not going to be the millennials. Unfortunately, I like the millennials. Don't get me wrong, but it's going to be the 18 to 24 group, and these are the post millennials. These are the Pluto and Sagittarius kids. If you've got any kind of conscience and foresight, you will understand that Hillary Clinton is a hawk. She's a war hawk. Now, it's out there. WikiLeaks has provided the material, and they're doing dumps every single day. The MSM is doing everything in its power to not pay any attention to the material. Now, clearly, if the material had to do with Donald Trump, what do you think the mainstream media would be doing? It would be WikiLeaks 24/7. 24/7. They'd be ready to canonize Julian Assange. But it's not the case because what's coming out is damning. And really where we are with all of this And this is where it's starting to bubble up. This is where it's starting to froth up, is Benghazi. Benghazi happened on what day? Benghazi, 9/11. 9/11. Do you know what day Bashir al-Assad was born on? September 11th. 9/11, 9/11, 9/11. It all goes back to 9/11. And it all goes back to the birth date of Sananda Yeshua Emmanuel, born on 9/11, not December 25th. It is the desecration of the day of the great avatar and the teacher, the world teacher. So here's the story. Apparently, they were running, they being the Obama government, the Obama wing of the government, were running a secret war. We know this, and they were running it through her server, Hillary's server. This is what was happening. This is what was happening. And I've talked about this for a while now because it all goes back to the White House. It all goes back to their proxy wars. It all goes back to their color revolutions and running them as a rogue operation. And Hillary Clinton knows all about rogue operations, all about it. That's what they were doing in the White House when Bill was there. That's what they were doing in Arkansas. They were running the rogue operation, deep state, black government, selling goods, services, most favored nation status to China, you name it, they were doing it. It's a crime syndicate. Christopher Stevens was sent. Now Christopher Stevens has been portrayed as being an angel in this tragedy that happened in Benghazi. It's important to note that Christopher Stevens comes from Chicago. Why? Why is it important? Because there were likely ties between Christopher Stevens and the Obama administration through the Chicago network. Christopher Stevens was sent to Benghazi to clean up a deal where the United States, i.e. Obama and Hillary, through the server, had sold Stinger missiles to Al-Qaeda. That's right. Stinger missiles were sold to our quote-unquote enemy. And the reason that they know this is because one of them was used against a helicopter, a U.S. helicopter. And Al-Qaeda did not arm the missile. So basically, what they were firing was a heavy-duty piece of metal that did not explode. And it hit the helicopter. The helicopter made it back to the base. The missile was intact. And, of course, it's got all the markings and numbers that shows that it was a Stinger ground-to-air missile that the United States sold. So Christopher Stevens was sent to Benghazi to clean this up. And that's when it all went to hell. Why? Because the Libyans had intercepted the messages through the unsecured server. And all of this goes back to the White House. This is why Hillary Clinton was pardoned again and again and again. Or not even pardoned, but just completely let off the hook. Because if you go far enough, and I've said this for months now, it goes all the way back to the White House and Obama. And what do we have? We have treason. We have working with the enemy. I mean, it is ugly. It is ugly. And this is where we're at right now. We are so close, so absolutely close to breaking through this glass ceiling of truth between the alternate media, the alternative media, and the mainstream media. We just need to take a howitzer to this thing. And it's going to come out, and at some point, somebody besides Alex Jones is going to bring something to the public, and it could be just days before the election. And it's going to pop. I'm on the record, it's going to pop. And chaos, absolute chaos can ensue. So if Obama does not stay in office, and we're not guaranteed that he won't stay in office, by the way, but if he doesn't, why does he want Hillary in the office? Why? Because he knows that she will keep all of the secrets intact, and that it will be not only business as usual, but they'll be moving ahead with their plans for globalization and one version of the New World Order. And I'm sure they've got a couple. These people are very crafty. They've been working on this for literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. This is a long-term plan, a long-term goal, and it's all aligning in their eyes. But what they don't understand, or maybe they do, maybe they're finally getting the picture, is that the masses, the weak, the huddled, the tired, the herd are starting to wake up. And this is what terrifies them the most, is when we start to wake up and we begin to push back. And it is happening. It's happening. Let's rewind the tape. Let's go back, say, 20 years. And we had a celebrity that said something. And it was political. We go, ooh, look at them. Listen to them. They know what's right. They exist at a higher, more elevated level. They have more money. They can do things. They can speak in accents. They can take on roles. They're the gods of our dreams and visions projected onto screens in front of us. Listen to them. Those days are over. They're over. Part of the awakening process, and this started back when, for me, when I was disassembling the New Age and the end of the New Age, and looking at all the New Age leaders and realizing that their job was to keep you in a somnambulistic state, in a trance, but in a heightened state of the trance. That was their job. Now, they may or may not have known it was their job. They have just been cooperating with a program that was been put in place. And because they figured out something inside themselves that set them apart from somebody else, or who knows, maybe they had some work or some assistance on an inner plane from a supernatural point of guidance, which does happen, by the way. These inner planes exist. We are moving in and out of dimensional time and space all the time. But the disassembling started to take place then. I started to just take a wrecking ball to these people. And not only in that circle, because what they weren't addressing is they weren't addressing the trance. They weren't addressing the notion of mind control. They weren't addressing the notion that a movement had been set up in order to corral people and be able to direct their spiritual evolution and conscious awakening in such a way that it completely cordoned them off from what was taking place in the mainstream. Now, it might have been okay during the Bush era. It might have been okay. But clearly, during the era of the Avatar, the golden one, it was not okay. It's like, this is our time. This is our place. Go fuck yourself. Everything that applied to Bush or Reagan does not apply here anymore. No. And if you do go there, guess what? You're a racist. I had Perry Ulander on this show about 3 years ago. Perry is brilliant. He's a brilliant satirist. He's a flaming liberal, but he's a truthful flaming liberal, and I respect that. And I had Perry on my show, and he was talking about how he was being accused of being a racist because he was criticizing Obama. And at that time, I didn't get it. That's because I was not moving in those circles. I was moving in circles where people were clearly okay with the truth. They were all right with the truth. Oh, yeah, so this is true. It had nothing to do with race or sex or gender or any of those things. But when I got that from Perry, it was puzzling for me. And now, 3 years later, I understand what he was going through. And that was, that was the invisible wall. And you crash the invisible wall, and there were plenty of labels and epithets waiting for you or anyone to throw them off of going further into the truth. Because what happens to us in this life, in our society, is we have this desperate need to be accepted. Because if we're not accepted, then we are cast out from the tribe. We are cast out from the group. And any of us who know what it's like to be cast out from the tribe and the group when we're in high school or junior high school, it is painful. It is painful. However, yours truly went through that. I went through the slings and arrows of being castigated and cast out. I was the outsider in high school. That's who I was. And I did not care. In fact, I even reveled in it. And it set the tone for the rest of my life. Now, are there parts of my life that I do want? And I do want some sort of semblance and order? Of course. I've got a son. I need to support him. I would one of these days like to have a situation where I'm living with another being and we're creating a life together instead of being in this kind of semi-isolated place in Austin, Texas, where all I do is work. It's fine. It's fine. This is my job. This is my service. This is my path. This is my dharma. I would like to incorporate some other elements to it, but I'm okay with being an outsider. Even here, I'm an outsider. And this is what people need to be able to address. They have to address the fact that they will have ideas, perceptions, and opinions that will make them unpopular and may not allow them to be accepted. That is it, boys and girls. If you can do that, still be in the world and sacrifice what another's opinion of you is, and you have achieved a form of liberation. That is the spiritual lesson for the day. And to do so in a way that is not reactionary. Because from an adolescent standpoint, you can stick your middle finger up in the air and, fuck you, I don't give a fuck. That's easy. That's easy to do. Because that's part of the program. You're supposed to do that. You're supposed to break away from the psychic umbilicus of your parents and society to find your own path. But what happens now is that they've got you cordoned off, because when you go into that phase, which is important, this is what happens astrologically. You go into the Saturn opposition at 14. This is what happens. But now they've got these limited hangouts for you as you begin to disassemble and break away from your parents and your culture. It's like, hey, over here, we have a new thing for you. Guess what? It's called gender fluidity. Come on over. You're breaking away from your normalcy, whatever that is, because that doesn't really exist anymore either. But come on over. We got a new thing for you. Jump on in. Oh, yeah, here's an LGBTQRZ group on campus. Oh, we have gender fluidity, equality, toilet week this week. This is what happens. This is what happens. And it's been happening since the 1950s. Since the 1950s. There's been a plan in place to capture the minds and the hearts of our youth and then move them. Move them. In the 50s, it was rock and roll. Rock and roll. Absolutely. In the 60s, it was a continuation. And I love rock and roll, don't get me wrong. I like to get my rock and roll anarchy on every now and then, even at 56 years of age. Driving down the road, feeling like a rebel. Got the music up loud, right? But this is what's happening. It's always happened. When I was a kid, though, what happened to me? When I was at that age, there was Watergate. And I saw Nixon just get pummeled. By the way, Nixon was impeached for 16 minutes of missing tapes. 16 minutes of tapes where he's listening in. Nixon was paranoid. He was listening in on people that were trying to do him in. And they probably were. 16 minutes. Hillary, 33,000 emails. 33,000 emails versus 16 minutes. What's going on here? We'll talk about Nixon more in the second hour, along with a number of other presidents and presidential candidates. What's the percentage of people that's needed or that are needed to break through the glass ceiling of truth? Is it 15% of the population, 20%, 25, 30, 33? Is it the magic 33? Is this when Rupert Sheldrake's morphogenetic field kicks in the 100th monkey, in the year of the monkey, in the year of the fire monkey? When it takes place, when all of a sudden we click into this collective gnosis that we know what the hell is going on, this is where we are. This is where it's all bubbling. Now, I listen to a lot of media. I take in a lot of media. Part of what I do before I do these shows is I take in a lot of stuff. I'm filtering. This is why I make the big money. You're out there, you're living your life, and you're digging, and I'm digging for you. And by the way, if you feel like you'd like to donate to that digging process, you can go to my website, which is looking fairly nice, by the way. If you haven't been to the website, I'm about 50% done with a remodel. Just check it out. It'll look even better soon. This is where we are. We're close. We are so close. But if perchance Hillary does get elected, this is not going away. This is only beginning. She's going to have a fight like you wouldn't believe on her hands. The next 8 years of her life, if she gets elected, will be hell, if she survives. Will it be easy for Trump? I seriously doubt it. Look at what they've done so far. Look at the armies that they've amassed against Trump. Let's just do a roll call here. Mainstream media. Is anybody in the mainstream media besides Sean Hannity supporting Trump? The answer is clearly no. Now, one may say, well, there's a reason why, because the mainstream media, they're the legitimate sources. They're the ones who know. No, they don't know. The mainstream media has been colluding with the government for decades. And do you think it is just colluding with one form of the administration? No. Go back to 9/11. Go back to that period of time where we were traumatized and sucked in to the Middle East, going after Saddam Hussein, and little Georgie Porgy pudding pie, finishing off the business that his father didn't want to do because God knows we need a boogeyman out there in the world so that we can continue to build weapons and sell them to our allies and to the people that we fight against. Got to have the boogeyman. But the boogeyman, the last boogeyman on the planet, besides Kim Jong-il and maybe Putin, think about that, because they go after boogeymen. They frame them. Just like you go to the post office, you see the most wanted signs. They go after him. They went after Muammar Gaddafi. They went after Saddam Hussein. They're going after Bashir al-Assad. Who's next on the boogeyman hit parade? It's that guy in Russia. And in every case and instance, they have gone after those people and created war. You know, when they went to war in Iraq, it was sold by a young woman who was the daughter of an arms merchant in Iraq, and she lied through her teeth. Absolutely lied through her teeth. And then after 9/11, we had all these experts, all these military consultants on Fox News. Oh, we have to do this, or we have to do this, or we have to do this, and this is what's going on there. And those guys were paid. They were paid by the government. They were paid by Fox News, and they were completely anything but neutral. They were there to sell the war. This is how complicit the media is. And this is how they're complicit with every single administration. And it's only when they want to turn the screws on somebody that they are no longer complicit. And we know this. But we have been so conditioned that if it is not delivered to us by one of our self-appointed gods of truth and revelation, that we just don't believe it. So it would have to come out of the mouth of somebody like Anderson Cooper. Good luck there. No, that's not happening. It would have to come out of the mouth of Matt Lauer. Good luck there. Katie Couric. Lester Holt. Well, if Lester Holt says it, it must be true. Because this is the only kind of level of validation that people who are not willing to pull away and rip away the facade and the curtain of reality will buy into and accept. That's it. That is it. And even then they may just shake their heads. I mean, and I would love to see it. I would love to see one of these people just go rogue and then put the quote unquote mainstream in a state of shock. I would love to see that. And just watch the disbelief and have them wrestle. I want to see them wrestle. I want to see some psychological pain here, to be honest with you. I would actually indulge in a little Schadenfreude if one of their own turned on them. Now, the alt-right, are they clean? Are they operating from a completely sanctified and holy agenda? No, they're not. They're not. They're human, just like everybody else. Nobody is perfect. Let's disabuse ourselves of that notion. No one's perfect. However, on that scale, there can be relative imperfections. Relative imperfections. Did Donald Trump ever order the burning and death of over 100 men, women, and children in a cruel and sadistic fashion during the high days of Moloch and the burning and sacrifice of children? Unequivocally, that answer would be no. And yet there is somebody running for president that has. And I'm talking about Waco, where Hillary Clinton and Janet Reno were responsible for the cold-blooded and brutal, absolutely brutal deaths of those men, women, and children in a sacrificial rite. A bonfire to Baphomet. That's what it was. And we could go on and on and on and on and on. Christopher Stevens was in Benghazi to clean up a deal, and the messages were intercepted. And there were pissed off people and they wanted to make America pay. And they did. Absolutely did. And this just might be truly the Gordian knot, because it goes all the way back to the White House. And as we get close to the event horizon, as more and more information comes through WikiLeaks about the conspiracy of the Democratic National Committee to cordon off and put the Bernie Sanders campaign into a state of deep freeze so that Hillary could win, and all the other attendant details, including her involvement in places like Syria and Libya, as more and more of this comes to the surface. Even though it does not appear on the nightly news with Lester Holt, it is penetrating our consciousness. It is coming to the surface. It is circulating in the nebula of our imagination. And it is going to make a difference. I'm sorry, it will. Because one of the things that we cannot predict about the internet, and this is why they want to get control of the internet, is that we are experiencing information explosion. It's almost like the Big Bang, even though I don't really believe in the Big Bang. But it's kind of like that. And there's this universe that's being created, and a lot of it is dreck. Let's not kid ourselves. But we are living in a place and a time, even if the internet was created for surveillance by the Army, the DOD, and all the other functionaries, it was a roll of the dice, and there is a chaos factor in the internet that is informing our lives, and that has to do with information. We're not living in a linear realm any longer. It's not even close. It is omnidirectional, omnidimensional, and it is expanding in our awareness. And the people that it will touch doesn't have to do with the people that are already in the process of awakening. It's that borderland. Remember when I talked about the 1/3, the 1/3, and the 1/3? Well, there's 1/3 of the population, clearly, that understands and gets it. And there's another third of the population which is somewhere in the middle. And this is where the circulation of information will take place and affect. And once it interpenetrates that 1/3, if we get even 70% of that 1/3, as is taking place now, we are in the process of a pivot, of a major pivot. Now remember, again, it can be an inception, awakening from the dream into another dream in a deeper level of hypnosis and trance. That's possible. But let's look at the options. The options are we go down that route and that path, or we go down the path of Hillary Clinton, who, by the way, I'm not even sure, again, I don't think she's human anymore. My new pet theory is that Hillary is like this kind of robotoid who's been taken over by an alien / interdimensional consciousness. That's my new theory, and that they're testing this model out. All right, why don't we do this? Why don't we play a little bit of music, which is I've been trying to get some new music, and I found a person over on Facebook, DX Stone, and he sent me some of his music, and I have been able to download it completely from SoundCloud. So I want to play it, but I can't. I have to figure out you just can't download anything now, right? You've got to download the media player, or else it won't let you get the tracks. It kind of sucks. So I'm going to go back in time and play some music from a different source. This is going to be Ari Oakland. Now, I usually play Enemy by Ari, which is a great song, but I'm going to play a different one, and I just have to find it here. Because I'm putting these shows back up on YouTube now, and I really don't want to get popped by YouTube, because YouTube is doing their own version of filtering and censoring, and that's just not what I want. So let me see if I can find it here. Where is it? Yes, I know dead air does not make great radio. I'd play that, but that's 8 minutes long. I can't play that. That's my track, by the way, that I'm thinking of, that I'm looking at. But it's 8 minutes long. Let's see what we have here. I'm looking. Looking. Let's see. Why don't we just play a little Susan Dahim? Let's get into Susan Dahim. 5 minutes and 38 seconds. This is Robert Phoenix, and you're listening to the Friday Farcast.
خود رو به پر
That was Society, and you are listening to the Friday Farcast. I'm Robert Phoenix. It is 1:02. Apparently, I pissed somebody off because I wouldn't take their call. He or she was in the chat room, went by the name of Blah51. They've called now 2 times, and apparently they want to take me on or something. They're out of the 510 area code, so they're from Berkeley. Hey, if you want to call back Blah51, whose profile no longer exists on Blog Talk Radio, then call in. I'll recognize your number. If you want to debate me, I don't have a problem with it. You know, what I do is I go into a place and I just start to riff and talk and free associate. This is what happens. And I'm sorry if I don't look down and see your number and make it so that you're so important that I interrupt what I'm doing to talk with and debate you, and apparently you think it would be more entertaining. Well, that remains to be seen. So if you're listening, you want to call back, then call back, and I'll get you on. And if you want to debate, we can debate, and I'll listen to you, and you can come at me, and we'll play that game. And maybe our listeners or my listeners will think it's really entertaining radio. And here's another piece of advice for you: get your own show. If you have something really important to say, then you get your own show. Not call back. And you've done it now. I've seen you in the queue 2 times. The 15-minute show. I'm not going to debate you in a 15-minute show. If you want to come back, come back. So, Jay Wagner was talking with Jeff Rentz recently. And Jay had something really interesting to say about what happened with the videotape. Now, there are people that think that it was Romney and the Mormon Republicans, the Bushes, Billy Bush, that they're the ones that hijacked the video and put it out there. Jay has an interesting theory about this. Jay thinks that it was Trump that actually leaked the video. And here's what his reasoning is. His reasoning is that if you wanted to really talk about this thing, you wouldn't do it on a Friday, because that's where you kill news, is on a Friday. You do it on a Monday. So if the Republicans and the Bushes and the Romneys, who are all doing dirty business together, if they wanted to derail Donald Trump, they would have done it the Monday before. So you'd have a whole week to get this into the news cycle, and for it to fulminate and stew and you turn into this boil, right? But if you release it on a Friday, are you really taking the best advantage of the news cycle? That was a really interesting point that Jay brought up. Now, the other point that is connected to that is that on Saturday, Trump immediately does a mea culpa. and apologizes. And then what happens after that is that it opens the door to talk about Bill Clinton and his indiscretions and rape at the debate. Now the gloves are off. So Jay brought up an interesting point, and if that's the case, it's pretty smart. Because if that was going to happen, if it was going to be exposed, and if something's going to happen with you, don't you want to get out in front of it? Don't you want to control the narrative, or at least, be engaged in such a way so that it does not look like you're a perpetrator as much as somebody who's coming forward, or at least if you're not coming forward, you're directing the narrative. I think it makes some sense. Okay. So there's a new statement video by Michelle Obama, which is incredibly strident, and it's out there, and it's denouncing Trump, it's denouncing his language, and very deeply offensive, and I get it. The language isn't great. It's not how I want my kid to talk. I'm sorry. It's not how I'm going to raise my kid. I don't agree with it. But at the same time, we have to understand that these people, like Donald Trump and all of the other people who have run for public office, have been in an elevated circle of power and influence and identity for decades, and with that comes the potential for indiscretions and the abuse of power. And for us to think otherwise is completely and utterly naive. Gandhi is not running for president. And by the way, Gandhi had his skeletons too. Gandhi used to sleep with young women, naked young women. This is true. You can look it up. So that he could test his ability to remain abstinent and pure. This is true. So, I mean, it's a little weird, right? Humans are weird. We're not normal. You show me somebody who is by the book from day one to now, and I'll show you somebody who, number one, is incredibly boring, and number two, is smart enough to know not to get tangled up in the octagon of politics. Okay? All right. So what I want to do now is I want to go back, and I want to look at rumors, facts, innuendo of a number of presidents and even Hillary Clinton. Now, I'm going to take you down a rabbit hole. And some of the stuff I'm going to talk about, you may not agree with. You may want me to cite my sources. But, hey, anything's fair game now. It's the end of conspiracy theory. This is what we're talking about. Why don't we start with Barack Obama? Shall we? Let's start with Barack Obama. Barack Obama, by the way, if you haven't seen it, there's a video of him floating around now where he's on a jet. It's 2008, running for president. And, of course, the press corps is on the jet, and he's got a boner. And if you slow the video down, sure enough, you can see the tumescence in his fairly tight trousers. And you can hear all the females on the press corps giggling, telling the agent to get down in front because they want a better look at his schlong. So this is really good behavior. This is presidential behavior. Well, and ironically, it kind of is, as you're about to find out. But that's not what I want to talk about. This is a story that got buried, and I'm gonna read you the story. There was a guy who was pretty popular. His name was Ulsterman. And he had a blog that was getting millions of hits. And it was during the 2008 election and just after the presidency. And eventually he faded into anonymity because the life cycle of the internet is fairly short. It's like the life of a moth. But this story was floating around, and this came out, and this is in conjunction with a choir director by the name of Donald Young, who was the choir director at Obama's church in Chicago. And the rumor was that Obama was having an affair with Donald Young. Donald Young winds up dead. Okay? So this is from that period of time. It is from redflagnews.com, and I'm going to read this. I was an intern for a local Chicago newspaper. It's a young woman and a college student working toward a journalism degree. This happened before Barack Obama was president. It happened a short time before he became a state senator in Illinois. He was not the big name he would become just a few years later. But around Chicago, he was a big enough name that I recognized who he was when I saw him. His book had just been published, and he had received some recognition locally for it. I had actually seen him on campus a couple of times the year before. He was an up-and-comer. Anyways, I got the chance to attend this big dinner party celebration event downtown that anybody in Chicago at the time. It was an event that took place just before the big Democratic Party convention. The mayor was to give a talk, and I was told to do a write-up of the mayor's comments, and if possible, get a short interview. I did not get the interview. I would figure about 300 or 400 people were there, lots of money and power in the room. As the night went on, the drinking and noise levels both escalated. I remember being a bit shocked to see these kind of people carrying on like they were, but it was also exciting to be around it. I wanted to emphasize, though, that I was not drinking. I was clear-headed the entire night. I saw what I saw, and I know what I saw. Just before I was going to leave, I ran into one of my professors and sat down to have a talk. I remember being pretty excited that she actually remembered me, and even more excited she wanted to ask me how I was doing and whatnot. I also remember she did seem a little drunk. We ended up sitting and talking for almost an hour, and by the time she stood up to leave, there were maybe just 20 people or so still hanging around. Everyone else had just left. I decided to look for a bathroom before taking off myself and followed a sign that led me down a hall that had all the lights already turned off. There were about 4 doors to the left that led to conference rooms, with a sign on the right of the hall pointing further down to the bathrooms. I was a little spooked because it was so dark, but managed to find the bathroom. When I came back out, I noticed one of the doors to a conference room was about halfway open. I remembered that no doors had been opened before, and I got a little freaked out. I hesitated because I was afraid to walk by the door. That was when I heard the voices, or not so much voices, but I heard sounds being made by a person or people. I also smelled something that was odd. Never smelled it before or since that night. A heavy, sweet smell that was filling up the hallway. It was not marijuana or anything like that. I was in college. I was plenty familiar with what marijuana smelled like. Something different. And as I stood there, not quite sure what to do, the smell seemed to go from sweet to kind of gross, like rotting garbage. It was weird. I started to try and sneak past the open door so whoever was in there couldn't hear me. But I could hear them. And when I realized the sounds coming out of that conference room were sexual, I heard a male voice saying, "Yeah," again and again. And then another sound from another male voice. I realized that there were at least 2 men in that room having sex with themselves. For someone else, I could not hear. I was almost past the door when I heard a loud sniffing noise and more of that weird smell coming from the room. And then one of the men yelled out the F word, and that's when I tripped. I tried to fall as quiet as I could, but when my right hand hit the floor, it kind of twisted under me, and it really hurt. I cried out and then was trying to get up as fast as I could so I could keep heading down the hall. I heard some scrambling from inside the dark conference room, and then one of the men told the other one to shut up and be quiet. And then the door opened behind me, and I turned around and saw a young, tall, thin black man looking at me. I recognized the face, but wasn't sure of the name right away, but was pretty sure he was someone important. I told him I was just using the bathroom, but knew I must have looked very embarrassed. He just stared at me for what seemed like forever. There was just enough light in that hall that I could see that his eyes were not really right. I thought he was probably drunk. Then his eyes seemed to suddenly clear up and become a lot more focused, and he looked down at me and he gave me a big smile. He asked me if I was okay. I looked down to his belt, which was undone, and I could see that his dress shirt was not tucked into his pants. When I looked back up at his face, his smile was long gone. He looked really angry at me now. He asked me again if I was okay, but he said it in a way that really spooked me. There was something in his voice that scared me really bad. And it was in that exact moment I finally recognized his face as the author and political candidate Barack Obama. I was just about to turn and walk as fast as I could out of the hallway when the door opened wider and another black man's face poked out. He said, "What the fuck is going on, B?" The guy I now recognized as Obama stepped all the way out of the hall and closed the door behind him, leaving the other man inside the conference room. He asked me again if I was all right. Now he was standing right over me. I smiled again, and I noticed that one of his front teeth seemed to have a chip in it, or was a lot shorter than the other one. He must have had work done because the pictures of him don't show that today. I don't know why I noticed that so much or why it was stuck with me, but it has. And his breath smelled really bad. It made me want to gag. It was so bad. I told him I was fine, and did kind of a half walk run down the hall and back into the main lobby. I looked back right before I turned the corner to make out Barack Obama still standing in the darkness of the hallway, looking back at me. It was very creepy. I didn't really make much of it. I mentioned it in a joking way to some friends that I'd interrupted some guys going out in the conference room, but never mentioned the name Obama when I did. Then I forgot about it pretty much until I was watching the news and saw that Obama was running for state senator. I figured whatever he was doing in his private life was his business, though, and didn't want to make any trouble for him. I actually agreed with his politics and voted for him. If he was gay or bisexual, I really could have cared less. Whatever issues he had that were between him and his family was none of my business, right? That's how I felt. So I forgot all about what I saw on that night again, and I hardly thought of it when I heard Barack Obama was running for president. That's until I heard a news story coming from my television while I was making dinner. A man had been murdered, shot numerous times at his home. I glanced up at the television, and there was the now dead man's face being shown. He looked older, heavier. His hair was longer, but it was him. It was the same face I'd seen poke out from the conference room with Barack Obama about 10 years earlier. The news report said he was a church choir conductor and school teacher. They didn't mention the name, the same church as Barack Obama. I found that out a short time later. Then I learned from another gay man from Obama's church had been murdered about a month before. That is when I started to really freak out. I kept my mouth shut and didn't say a word about it. Then I started to feel like I was being watched. I would see a car parked outside my apartment. That wasn't any of my neighbors. One time I caught a man staring at me from across the street. When I was getting my mail, I was worried I was losing my mind from way too much paranoia. Let me cut to the chase around this. Here's the update. Since publication, many within the Ulster Facebook army have come forward with evidence that would support some of the specific claims made within the recollection above. The strange smell came from the conference room, was most likely been poppers, a drug that was predominantly used within the gay community. Its smell is said to alter quickly from sweet to that of rank, dirty laundry. Its effects last only a few minutes, indicating a user could recover quickly after inhaling. Second, both video and phone evidence were provided to show considerable work has been done on Barack Obama's teeth, so that detail is fleshed out. The alteration to his appearance and speech is remarkable. And one of the front teeth does appear to be considerably shorter and of very different shape. So here's another update. This is from 2011. Ulsterman, you don't know me. There was a story that you sent a while back about an encounter with Obama in Chicago from years ago. You then published it, letting you know the person who sent you that story is no longer alive. She passed away unexpectedly. I don't know if what she said, saw what she saw. I don't know what she said she saw. But I know that she believed every word of it. She was not lying. She feared for her life. I don't know if her death and what she believed in she saw is related. I do know. She recently had to sit down with somebody about this story. Now she is gone. I promised her to let you know that is what I'm doing. You won't hear from me again. So this came up and made the rounds, made the circles, and it's creepy. It's absolutely creepy. Now, there's also another story with Larry Sinclair and Obama, and Sinclair went through the press cycle, the media cycle. So that's just with our current president. If we were to go back in time, what happened with George Bush in the White House with Jeff Gannon and the close to 30 visits that Gannon made to the White House with overnights? And if you look into Jeff Gannon, he was at press conferences. Jeff Gannon lobbed softball questions anytime things got hot and heavy and reporters wanted to go after Bush. Jeff Gannon was there to lob an easy, off-the-track question and divert the conversation. Jeff Gannon had his own website, and it was basically him pimping himself out as a rough and tough kind of military guy for men that like rough trade. It was on the internet. It existed. Now, there is an interesting connection between Jeff Gannon and Johnny Gosch, which I don't want to get into right now because it's a much deeper rabbit hole. I'm just trying to show you that prior to Barack Obama, George Bush had serious indiscretions. Just because you're president of the United States does not make you immune to the flesh and sometimes very, very dark secrets bound up in the flesh. Who was there around Bush but the neocon cabal and Dick Cheney and all the dirty laundry that Dick Cheney and Don Rumsfeld were connected to? And who are they connected to? Through Kathy O'Brien. I'm going to read you some excerpts today from The Transformation of America with Kathy O'Brien. This is not for the timid. So you're being forewarned here. Louis Libby, who was one of the only people in the Bush administration who was found guilty of perjuring himself and actually did a little bit of time, wrote a salacious book that included incense and bestiality. Of course, he's not a president, but he's part of the president's cabinet. If we go back before George Bush, we're in the Clinton administration. Let's just take a quick look at the people that Bill Clinton had indiscretions with. Eileen Wellstone, the 19-year-old woman who said Clinton sexually assaulted her after she met him at a pub near Oxford, where the future president was a student in 1969. A retired State Department employee who asked not to be identified confirmed he spoke with the family of the girl and filed a report with his superiors. Clinton admitted having sex with the girl but claimed it was consensual. The victim's family declined to pursue the case. Eileen Wellstone. In 1972, a 22-year-old woman told campus police at Yale University she was sexually assaulted by Clinton, a law student at the college. No charges were filed. But retired campus policeman contacted by Capitol Hill Blue confirmed the incident. The woman tracked down by Capitol Blue last week confirmed the incident but declined to discuss it further, would not give permission to use her name. In 1974, a female student at the University of Arkansas complained that then law and school instructor Bill Clinton tried to prevent her from leaving his office during a conference. She said he groped her and forced his hand inside her blouse. She complained to her faculty advisor, confronted Clinton, but Clinton claimed the student came on to him. The student left the school shortly after the incident. Reached at her home in Texas, the former student confirmed the incident, but declined to go on record with her account. Several former students at the university have confirmed the incident in confidential interviews, said that there were other reports of Clinton attempting to force himself on female students. Juanita Broderick, a volunteer in Clinton's gubernatorial campaign, said he raped her in 1978. Mrs. Broderick suffered a bruised and torn lip, which she said she suffered when Clinton bit her during the rape. From 1978 to 1980, Clinton's first term as governor of Arkansas, state troopers assigned to protect the governor were aware of at least 7 complaints from women who said Clinton forced or attempted to force himself on them sexually. One retired state trooper said in an interview that the common joke those assigned to protect Clinton was, "Who's next?" One former state trooper said other state troopers would often escort women to the governor's hotel after political events, often more than one in an evening. By the way, as a side note, a number of those state troopers have died. 3 of them died at Waco. They were part of the ATF assigned to go in and perform a surgical tactical hit on the compound of the Branch Davidians. And they were the group, the small group, about 4 of them, who were shot, and I think 3 out of the 4 were killed, which started the siege at Waco. Those were all, except for the guy who was leading the group, those were all Arkansas State troopers, and you can look that up. One of the people that died at the bombing of the Murrah building in Oklahoma City was a guard who was on duty, a former Arkansas State trooper. Just a little footnote here. Carolyn Moffett, a legal secretary in Little Rock in 1979, said she met then Governor Clinton at a political fundraiser, and shortly thereafter received an invitation to meet the governor in his hotel room. I was escorted there by a state trooper. When I went in, he was sitting on a couch, wearing only an undershirt. He pointed at his penis and told me to suck it. I told him I didn't even do that for my boyfriend. He got mad, grabbed my head, and shoved it into his lap. I pulled away from him and ran out of the room. The list goes on. We've got Elizabeth Ward, Miss Arkansas, who won Miss America, told friends she was forced by Clinton to have sex with them. Paula Corbin, Sandra Allen James, Christy Zurcher, Kathleen Willey. The list goes on and on and on. And we're having a discussion about some salacious language. Again, I don't condone the language. I'm not raising my kid to talk like that. I'm just trying to put this into context. What about Hillary? It's been often stated that Hillary has her own skeletons in the closet. Well, there was a controversial book written years ago by a woman by the name of Kathy O'Brien. And the book is called Transformation of America. In it, it is the most detailed confessional in blueprint for somebody who's been turned into a traumatized, mind-controlled sex slave. And she has details like you would not believe with people from the halls of power and influence in Washington, D.C. that are so perverse and so dark that it makes it almost difficult to read. And she pulls no partisan punches. None. So I'm going back in time. I'm time traveling. I'm going to read you a portion of the book. This is from page 155 of The Transformation of America. This is when Kathy O'Brien has been presented to Hillary Clinton. And this is Hillary and Bill, and a woman with the last name of Houston. And somebody by the name of Hall. So there's some news in here that has to do some content has to do with cocaine and Clinton. I'll skip that. I'll get right into it. Hall smiled at his friend, which was apparently interpreted as consent. Clinton mentioned for his aide to get his ledger. Overstreet began pulling out his paperwork. Hall neatly cleared the table of the remaining coke lines. Remember, this is Kathy O'Brien. Clinton gestured to me and told Houston, "Get her out of here." Houston did move and laughed. "She's a presidential model. She's kept secrets bigger than yours." Clinton responded, "I don't care. Get her the fuck out of here." Hall's wife led me away and locked me in a back bedroom. After an indeterminate period of time, I heard her telephone Hillary at the guest villa. She then drove me up the mountain through the dark to meet with Hillary. Although I previously met Hillary, we had very little to say to each other. particularly since I was still dazed and tranced from the tortures I had endured at the CIA near Death Trauma Center in Lampe. Hillary knew I was a mind-controlled slave, and like Bill Clinton, just took it in stride as a normal part of life and politics. Hillary was fully clothed and stretched out on the bed, sleeping when Hall's wife and I arrived. Hillary, I brought you something you really enjoy, kind of an unexpected surprise. Bill ordered her out of the meeting, and I took her to my bedroom and made an interesting discovery. She's literally a two-faced, referring to my vaginal mutilation, carving bitch. Hillary opened her eyes and sleepily roused herself. Show me. Hall's wife ordered me to take my clothes off while Hillary watched. Is she clean? Hillary asked, meaning disease-free. Of course, she's Bird's. She's referring to Robert Byrd, who was Kathy O'Brien's handler. She responded, continuing the conversation as though I were not there. Plus, I heard Houston say something about her being a presidential model, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. It means she's clean, Hillary said matter-of-factly as she stood up. I was not capable of giving thought to such things back then, but I am aware in retrospect that all presidential model slaves I knew seemed to have an immunity to social diseases. It was a well-known fact in the circles that I was passed around in that government-level mind-controlled select slaves were clean to the degree that none of my abusers took precautions, such as wearing condoms. Hall's wife patted the bed and instructed me to display the mutilation. Hillary exclaimed, God. Now, I'm going to skip the details because they're rather salacious, okay? In fact, they're downright dirty. But this is an account that occurs in Kathy O'Brien's book, and she does not pull any punches. Hillary's in here. Robert Byrd is in here. Bush Sr.'s in here. What's his name? Gerald Ford is in here. In fact, I'm going to talk about Ford. Reagan's in here. Dick Cheney plays a huge role, literally and figuratively, in this. Here's what she says about Gerald Ford. Remember, this is the same person. This is the same book, The Transformation of America. So she moves. They move. Soon after we moved, they were in Michigan. Soon after we moved, my father was reportedly caught sending kiddie porn through the U.S. mail. It was a bestiality film of me and my Uncle Sam O'Brien's boxer dog, Buster. My Uncle Bob also implicated in manufacturing the porn out of apparent desperation to inform my father of a U.S. government defense intelligence agency top-secret project to which he was privy. This was Project Monarch. Project Monarch was a mind control operation which was recruiting multi-generational incest abused children with multiple personality disorder for its genetic mind control studies. I was a prime candidate, a chosen one. My father seized the opportunities that would provide him immunity from prosecution. In the midst of the pandemonium that ensued, Jerry Ford arrived at our house with the evidence in hand for a meeting with my father. Is Earl home? He called to my mother, who nervously stood behind the screen door, hesitating to let him in. Not yet, my mother replied, her voice shaking. He should have been home from work by now. I know he's expecting you. That's okay, Ford turned his attention to me. I was standing outside on the front porch. He crouched down to my level, patting the large brown envelope containing the confiscated porn tucked under his arm. He said, you like doggies, huh? Buster is a nice doggy, I replied. He's funny. Not understanding why the dog had been whisked away when the porn was confiscated, I complained, Buster's gone. Buster's gone, Ford asked. Yeah, my uncle took him away. I told him. Ford laughed loudly at the irony of my statement. In my limited view, I thought he found it humorous that Buster was gone. You see, she had no memory of what she did with the dog because she'd been traumatized. My father pulled into the driveway honking the horn of his new tan convertible. Ford stood up with his fly eye level to me. I noticed his penis was erect and reached for it as conditioned. Not now, honey, he said. I have business to tend. Ford went inside with my parents to officially seal my fate. She goes on to have mind-controlled sex with Gerald Ford. This is what she says. Gerald Ford, a.k.a. Leslie Lynch King Jr., served on the Appropriations Subcommittee for the CIA and was appointed to the Warren Commission to investigate the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, while I knew him only as a porn boss. I am telling you, boys and girls, the world that Donald Trump is in, and this is, I'm not condoning Trump's language, please. I'm trying to give you context because there are people out there who are turning this into such a faux issue of morality. They don't even understand. They have no idea, not one scintilla of an idea or perception of how dark and deep this rabbit hole goes. And this is what, and the reason why is because we are traumatized and we are living in a socially conditioned state of mind control. And that we can't even remember or go there or appropriate the kind of mental state that will allow us to comprehend what takes place. Let me go back a little further. Let's talk. Now, Nixon was a family guy for the most part. Okay, he went to the Bohemian Grove. Nixon was not a Mason, by the way. Nixon was a Quaker. Can you believe that? He was a Quaker. He was not a Mason, which is why, to a large degree, they ousted him. But he did go to the Bohemian Grove, and when he was there, he couldn't believe that the place was filled with a bunch of queers and faggots, or fairies. That's what Nixon called it. Jimmy Carter was pretty clean. There's not a lot of dirt on Carter. That's why it only lasted 4 years. Reagan, there's dirt on Reagan. It happens prior to him being president, but there's dirt on Reagan. But what I want to talk about now is Lyndon Johnson. And this is going to blow your mind with Lyndon Johnson. So I just find this soon. So Lyndon Johnson, this is from a trusted news source, Cracked. Although Disinfo's reported this. I'll read you. This is from a website, Top 10 HQ, which is basically regurgitating what Cracked has printed. It says, put simply, Lyndon B. Johnson was not a shy man. He was tremendously proud about the size of his penis, which he affectionately nicknamed Jumbo. To show it off, he would frequently urinate in public and wave it around at anyone unfortunate to walk in the bathroom when he was using the urinal. Poor White House staff also had to put up with him sitting on the toilet with the door open, issuing orders, and carrying on conversations as he emptied his bowels. He also took great pleasure in persuading envoys, so these are people from other countries, right, to join in a spot of skinny dipping in the indoor pool, which had been built for Roosevelt. This was apparently a not-so-subtle method of intimidating others in a masculine show of force with his Mini Johnson. In one of his most famous penis-flashing incidents, LBJ was apparently so sick of reporters haranguing him about why America was involved in Vietnam that he unzipped his pants, and this is kind of a famous story, and declared this is why. Not to be bested by the antics of his predecessor, that's JFK, Johnson was also a terrible womanizer and is believed to have once remarked that he had more women by accident than Kennedy ever had on purpose. He shamelessly made passes at any woman he came across, and his private mistresses were referred to his staffers as LBJ's harem. He also allegedly had a buzzer installed in the Oval Office so that Secret Service staff could let the president know if his wife was on her way. Then we go back to Kennedy. And, in Kennedy's affairs, Marilyn Monroe, Angie Dickinson, Mary Pinchot Meyer, legendary. I'm not justifying Trump's speech. Again, I'm not teaching my kid to talk like that or to think of women in those terms. I'm just trying to pull back the curtain a little bit here so that we see what's going on and that nobody's clean, and to disabuse ourselves of those quaint notions. It is a dirty fucking business. It is about power. It is about influence. It is about money. It is about leverage. And to think that there is anything remotely presidential or diplomatic about the position is completely erroneous and naive. I'm just here to set the facts straight. That's it. Now, again, you have your choice. You can either throw down with the mainstream media, and you can throw down with the prospect of war. You can throw down with the continuation of the Obama policies for the next 8 years, both of whom, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, studied with Saul Alinsky, and are uber globo-socialists. And you can throw down with that. Or you can go with a guy that's imperfect and may throw us into a completely different state of totalitarianism in one world governance, and at the same time, he may just put the brakes on this thing and evolve, and we may just have a shot at slowing down tyranny so that we can begin to unlock our tongues and unfreeze our brains and become sovereign individuals so that the quote-unquote realm of conspiracy can rise to the surface and we can clear the shelves finally and get on with the business of life on this planet. It is about time. And we are at the crossroads. That's it. We're at the crossroads. And we're at the end of conspiracy because it's becoming transparent. It's rising to the surface. And all these people that represented some higher moral ground because they were elevated, that they were an actor or an athlete or a politician or a scientist, those days are over. They're over. Disabuse yourself of the notion that these people have any kind of authority, insight, clarity, or enlightenment more than you do. They do not. Take your power back. Take it back right now. Disassemble your idols. Hell, disassemble me. I'm not perfect. I've got issues. I've got warts. I'm willing to address them most of the time. And even when I'm not willing to address them, I have some good support in my life, and people, help me get there. And they realize that it's the best thing to do. You are the power. You are the change. Remember that. Remember that. And align your moral compass in a way that is clear and true. And to get to that, you have got to wade through some uncomfortable material. That's the work. Because unless you do that, you will be manipulated. Whether it's your guilt, your personal guilt, your social guilt, whatever it is, you'll be manipulated. And as you're manipulated, guess what? You are less effective. You are less whole. And you live your life from a place of fragmentation. Now, if somebody wants to come on my show and they want to debate me about that, fine. Then debate me about that. All right. That's about it, I think. Don't you think? I think we've covered just about. I mean, I could go deeper. I guess I could go into Warren G. Harding's sex life if I wanted to. I don't want to go back that far though. He had a pretty significant sex life. Let's put it that way. You know, back in the old days, they would choose leaders of tribes by the size of their schlongs. This is true. This is true. I wonder, have we moved that far? Is this really what it just boils down to? If that's the case, maybe Ron Jeremy should be president. All right. It's the weekend. It's Friday. Have a great weekend. Unplug from the internet for a while. Do something with your friends. Do something with your family. Read a book. Get off TV. Do something organic. Reconnect with nature. Stay plugged in to a different kind of grid. Let's try that. Let's all try that, shall we? I'm making my commitment to do that. And as you do, you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to the Friday Farcast. Here's Philip K. Dick.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu. Perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words, I submit that these impressions are valid and significant. And I will even say this, such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.
When you don't go to Geico.com, car insurance can be confusing. Like Swedish techno confusing.
Bark, bark, meow, meow. Dance with me, purple cow. Bark, bark, meow, meow. Ooh, you lovely cow.
Geico makes it easy. With 24/7 access, all you have to do is go to Geico.com and you could save money on car insurance. It just makes sense. Unlike, you know.
Dance with me, purple cow. I like your moves.
When you don't go to Geico.com, car insurance can be confusing. Like Swedish techno confusing.
Bark, bark, meow, meow. Dance with me, purple cow. Bark, bark, meow, meow. Ooh, you lovely cow.
Geico makes it easy. With 24/7 access, all you have to do is go to Geico.com and you could save money on car insurance. It just makes sense. Unlike, you know.
Dance with me, purple cow. I like your moves.